Hello and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. I'm Brandi, Kruse. The White House, as you know, is trying to clean up D.C. from a crime front. It also turns out that they want to do something really crazy. I mean, this is crazy stuff. They want to fix the homeless crisis in D.C. by enforcing the laws that are already on the books there.
For far too long, these laws have been completely ignored, and the homelessness problem has ravaged the city. So DC Code 22-1307 and DC Municipal Regulation 24-100 give the Metropolitan Police Department the authority to take action when it comes to homeless encampments. So homeless individuals will be given the option to leave their encampment, to be taken to a homeless shelter, to be offered addiction or mental health services, and if they refuse, they will be susceptible to fines or to jail time. Again, these are pre-existing laws that are already on the books. They have not been enforced, which is part of the reason for this federalizing of the National Guard to bring in this assistance for law enforcement. While we are targeting criminals and trying to remove criminals off of the streets, we also want to make DC safe and beautiful, and that involves removing mentally disturbed individuals and homeless encampments as well.
Yeah, and that's because the White House knows one simple fact, that homelessness and crime are inextricably linked together. One comes with the other. Homelessness, because it's not a housing crisis, it's a drug crisis and a mental illness crisis. You have people who are more susceptible to committing crimes. You're trying to fund your drug habit. For people who are mentally disturbed, how many random acts of violence have we seen in democratic cities perpetrated by someone who was homeless because of their mental illness? And as the White House points out, and as we well know, living in an area with one of the worst homeless crises in the entire nation, at some point, Democrats knew this too and understand this too. As Caroline Levitt pointed out there, these laws that they're enforcing in D.C. around homelessness are already on the books. They're just going to actually enforce the laws, but they existed because at some point, Democrats were sane enough to realize that crime and homelessness go hand in hand. And then, I don't know, at one point in the last 15 years, as the crisis gets worse, you would decide to take an even more hands-off approach to dealing with people who are living on the streets, often because they're using actively illegal drugs or they're dealing with a mental health crisis. So the White House, and I think this is going to be a test, and obviously, this is tied to what's happening locally. I'll get to in a moment something that happened here at a homeless camp. But this is going to be a test for the kind of harder line on homelessness. We always say, you cannot allow people to just build encampments. In Seattle, we've got people building like 3-story encampments out of crap they find in the dumpster, and 3-story shelters, and then they stay there for months or years. You cannot allow these encampments to sit there and fester. And we've been saying that Seattle and Portland and LA and San Francisco need to take a harder line. So I hope what the Trump administration does works. But this is a test of it, right? Like, hey, either you go into shelter or you get treatment or you're going to jail. Period. Finding them won't do anything, because they're not going to pay it. So either we have shelter for you, we have treatment for you, and either you accept it or you're going to jail. So this will be a test if the approach that I believe is the right approach is going to actually work in D.C. But I'll tell you what, I know it's going to be a hell of a lot better than continuing to do the same thing over and over that has failed in cities like Seattle and states like Washington, Oregon, and California for years and years and years and years. There is an insane example of this failure that happened over the weekend. So there was a shooting, you probably heard about it. It happened at Virgil Flame Park in North Seattle in the Lake City neighborhood over the weekend on Sunday. This is the post from the Seattle Police Department. Detectives investigating double homicide in Virgil Flame Park. They said it was around 6 o'clock. Patrol officers responded to a shooting. Police found 2 men with multiple gunshot wounds. They provided emergency medical treatment. One of these guys died at the scene. The other one died at the hospital. Unfortunately, officers, K-9 team, King County Sheriff's Guardian 1 helicopter searched for the suspect, search, haven't found him. So whoever walked into this park littered with homeless, with tents, and shot 2 people multiple times in cold blood, well, they're still out there in our community. Imagine that. Como News' Jeremy Harris pointed out something I think is important as we talk about the insanity and the insane policies around this. He said witnesses said there were children on the basketball court about 15 yards away from the shooting in the encampment. And that is because there is an encampment 15 yards away from a basketball court where kids play basketball. That, in and of itself, is asinine and is a significant problem that we see over and over and over in cities like Seattle. The desire to coddle these homeless individuals so much that you will do so at the expense of the safety of children. Because this particular park in, again, North Seattle, the Lake City neighborhood, it is a park, first and foremost, with a playground and basketball courts and fields that are supposed to be for kids to enjoy. But instead, like so many parks in the city of Seattle over the years, it's been overrun by homeless druggies. And now, I couldn't help but laugh when I first saw this, although it's such a sad indictment of Seattle. Como News again, city orders closure of Seattle homeless encampment in public park after double homicide. Yeah, no shit. Oh, whoa, you're going to close the homeless encampment in a city playground because of a double homicide? Well, gee, I'm glad you can make the right decision on this one. But I also find it quite fascinating that you're not in there immediately with bulldozers and dumpsters. You have to post a notice? Hey, tack, tack, tack. And we're the tree huggers. They tack that thing right into a tree. We're the Seattle tree huggers. Oh, we're going to clear this camp. Yeah, no shit. There was 2 people killed here on Sunday. It should have been cleared overnight on Sunday. And people should have been directed to one of the many shelters that has availability in the city of Seattle and to get treatment for their addictions. But no, we've got to, we'll wait. And then on Tuesday, boop, 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 we'll go and put up a sign and just let people know, hey, we'll store your stuff for you, but you got to go at some point. And look, if this is a situation where we had this homeless encampment that just popped up overnight, I'm not saying that's never happened, right? It's like, one camp gets swept and all of a sudden they said, hey, let's go to that park over there by the children's playground. But that's not the case. I was doing a little sleuthing online about this particular park. I saw a post going back to 2014 on X with people in the neighborhood complaining about homelessness in and around the park. But what I found interesting, this post from an X user, J. Michelle, it has a picture of a guy kind of passed out underneath a park bench. He says, at Virgil Flame Park in Lake City, there are 3 guys like this one sleeping under benches, illegal at SPD, and tags the Seattle Police Department. And he's got a bike there. And I look at that picture now, right? If I look at that picture under the current day in Seattle, that's not so bad, really. Hey, dude, he's got a bike. He's got jeans on. He looks relatively, he doesn't have trash around him. I'm like, that's a pretty tame homeless situation right there. July 2014, he tags the Seattle Police Department. They even responded like, oh, hey, send us, more information or whatever. So fast forward a few years, September 2021, people in the community still pointing out the problem. Look how much worse it is. Look how much worse between those 2 pictures of citizens who are pointing out homelessness at Virgil Flame Park. In just those 7 years, between July 2014, one dude sleeping under a bench, and then the whole street along a beautiful tree-lined avenue, filth, squalor, derelict RVs. This is an X account that puts out information about encampments around the city. Tent and RV camping next to Seattle Park's Virgil Flame Park, tagging Visit Seattle and other individuals who might do something about it. So you look at that, and then you fast forward again, 4 more years, and we have a double homicide. So you see in real time, and it was actually really fascinating for me, and I know this happens, right? We Heart Seattle, which is the volunteer organization that cleans up some of these parks, we did an encampment cleanup with them like 3 years ago or something for a volunteer day of service. They were digging feet into the ground to get out filth and trash from the homeless encampment being in that park for so long. Like a decade or more. You could tell by the depth of the trash and how it had started to become one with the earth. But here you have this one example that shows a failure over time. And Nicole, if you can go back to the first picture of the guy under the park bench. Imagine if in July 2014, this is a few years after I moved to Seattle, 3 or 4. Imagine if the city of Seattle started taking things like that seriously. This is at, I think, kind of the beginning of the heroin crisis getting very, very bad, sort of in the midst of it. Now, of course, fentanyl has made things much worse. Imagine how much easier it would have been to nip the homeless crisis in the bud when it was like that. Couple guys sleeping under park benches. But no, we are hands off. We have laws on the books. We don't want to enforce them. So we're hands off. And then 6 years later, 7 years later, it turns into something that is overwhelming. Again, that picture in September 2021. That is a much more difficult camp to clean, is it not? Those are a lot more people to try to get access to services, is it not? And then you let something like that go, and then you have people who die. And I bet you there's been people who've died in that park before over the years, likely of overdoses. But you have 2 people shot to death in front of kids. So at no point in that period was there a successful effort to clean up that park. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And then 2 people are shot to death 15 yards from kids. What is the city of Seattle doing in the lead up to that shooting? They know there's a homeless crisis there. There's been one for years. Well, you know what they're doing? They're pushing out notices. Seattle parks, I kid you not. This is 2 weeks before the shooting. Hosting events for kids as young as 2 years old at the park. And they've been doing this there for years. The picture on the left, if you're watching, is from September of 2017. Kids coming out, learn how to skateboard at the park. And we already know there was a homeless crisis there because we've shown you the evidence of that. And here's Seattle parks 2 months ago, rather. Not quite 2 months ago, a month and a half ago. Kids ages 2 to 8 come learn soccer with Happy Feet. 30-minute weekly class on Monday afternoons at Virgil Flame Park. Choose July or August sessions or come for both. So that's sessions this month. Kids ages 2 to 8. Happy Feet. Well, you can't have happy feet in a place where people just died, riddled with bullet holes. So here they are. They know there's a homeless crisis. They know there's kids at this park. They're inviting kids to this park. They're inviting children as young as 2 years old. While just 15 yards away, they've got people doing drugs, living in filth and squalor, and apparently beefs with probably gangs or drug dealers, and they get shot to death like Swiss cheese. It's insane. I want to read, though, because, again, this is an example of what we're doing isn't working. And the test of what the White House is going to do in D.C. to see if that is a method that works and that we, even though Trump did it, might be able to do across the country. In this Como News article, they talked to a neighbor who lives in the area, and he's really mad about all of this, right? He said the city cleared this encampment earlier this summer, but it reformed quickly. He said they got rid of all the leftover trash, but the campers came back. They came back in hordes. There are more of them now. Como says the area has struggled with homeless encampments for several years. The neighbor called it despair. He said that's the word, because there's no action from the powers that be. We have the reputation of smoke your dope, spread your graffiti, we don't care, we'll feed you, we'll give you clothes, we'll reward you. The owner of Lake City's Little Tiger ice cream shop told Como News the impacts of the nearby encampments are impacting neighbors and business owners. His store has been vandalized several times this summer, and other businesses have had to fortify their storefronts due to break-ins. He says, we called the police and they even told us, call us, but we probably won't show, but call us so we can keep the data. The business owner said, we're not interested in data. We're interested in results. Seattle doesn't want to hear it. They don't listen. They have their way of doing things. Now, I don't know that business owner. I don't know the resident who spoke to Como News. I don't know their political affiliation or their political leanings. But I do know this. Every single district in the city of Seattle is deep, deep blue. Every single district in the city of Seattle has continued to elect people who have been in positions of power while this crisis has gotten significantly worse. So I won't specifically call out those 2 individuals and say you should vote different, because for all I know, they could be the 1 or 2 Trump supporters living in Lake City. But you have this situation right now, as Trump says he's going to federalize D.C., and especially after he announced they're going to put homeless people in jail if they don't take shelter space and treatment. What are the Democrats doing in response to that? They're hiring paid protesters to flood D.C. They're all over the airwaves with their regular drumbeat. Trump is cruel. He's a horrible person. This is a militarization and all of that. So they're mad because Trump is going to take a harder line with homeless in D.C. And at the same time, Democrats in our state have taken such a soft approach with homelessness that people are being shot in broad daylight just steps from where kids are playing basketball. And Democrats make up the majority of the neighborhood where it happened. So at this point, it's like, who do you be mad at, right? Because this is what they vote for. Not all of them, but a vast majority of the voters that vote, when presented with different options, they vote for the people who want to leave homeless people in place. They vote for the people who want to defund the police. They vote for the people who want to decriminalize hard drugs. They vote for the people who want to pussyfoot around all these immense societal issues rather than doing anything different at all. You don't even have to go as far as Donald Trump is going to go in D.C. Why don't we try, I don't know, doing sweeps and then making sure it sticks? Doing sweeps and then saying, we will be back here sweeping every single day until you no longer return to this park. But they think they can go in a couple times, maybe every 3 years, clear the encampment, and then just wash their hands of it and bring kids back in to play soccer. Even though, as these neighbors say, more people came back than ever before because they're emboldened to do so. There are no consequences for them. So the question really is for the voters of Seattle, do you want something done differently or not? Do you want a different outcome? Let's ask that. Are you happy with the homeless crisis, or do you want a different outcome? My guess is that 99.9% of you would say you want a different outcome. So that would mean doing something different, right? At the very least, that means you can't vote for the same people. You can't vote for the same political ideology. If you want different outcomes, you have to do something different. So let's say Donald Trump goes in D.C. and all of a sudden, 3 months, D.C. is shimmering. It is safe to walk the streets. The repeat offenders have been locked up. The homeless individuals got sick of being put in jail, so they decided, or after a few nights of sobriety, they decided, yeah, I do want to get clean. So let's say what Trump does, and the proof is in the pudding. I'm not going to say till he does it that it works, although I have a feeling that that is going to be a much more successful endeavor than just doing nothing, Doing nothing versus doing something. I think doing something's probably going to be better. But what will Democrats do? And more importantly, what will Democratic voters do? Will they continue to just lose it over Donald Trump, even if he shows great success in D.C.? Or will they finally have enough balls to vote different or to demand of their elected leaders in places like Seattle and Portland and San Francisco and L.A. that, hey, you've got to stop vilifying everything Donald Trump does, because in this case, what he did worked, and we should do some of that here. That's really up to individual voters in Seattle and the collective of the blue voters in Seattle to demand something better for themselves and their city. To stand up and say, you know what, I don't like Trump, but it's also not okay for people to be shot to death in broad daylight right next to where my kids play basketball. So that's up to you. You get to decide, do I continue to fall into this orange man, bad death loop and nothing ever gets better because I'm so obsessed with the president? Or can I shake myself out of it, break free, and demand better of the people who are actually influencing the policies in my state and in my city and in my neighborhood? And again, we see this over and over, and it's so transparent. I kind of wonder, when are people going to be offended by it, right? When as a voter, does it start to insult your intelligence, and do you start to feel that way? Because another example of this, so the Washington State Democratic Party, they put out this post on Facebook about, oh my God, tariffs are horrible for parents and back to school supplies. With back to school around the corner, parents shouldn't have to worry about hidden fees. Thanks to Trump's tariffs, essential school supplies are increasing in cost forcing Washington parents to pay the price for his reckless policies. Then it's got these articles from The Hill and CNBC and Axios about tariffs and tight budgets reshape back-to-school shopping. Now, if you're someone who cares about the cost of back-to-school supplies, which I don't have kids, but I care. I want my neighbors to be able to afford, I remember what it was like to be on a tight budget and, to be back to school shopping and the stress that put on my mom and all of those things. So I care about that. And I think it's okay to question if tariffs are really having an impact on the cost of back to school supplies, and you care about that, the cost of back to school supplies, then it's okay if Donald Trump is to blame for it. But in Washington state, for the Washington state Democrats to do that, I have one big problem with that. During this past legislative session, just a couple months ago, state representatives, led by State Representative Travis Couture, a Republican, decided, hey, let's do something helpful for parents and for teachers. Let's give them, this year at least, a very small window and do a tax holiday for what? For back-to-school supplies.
This sales tax holiday would be a great message, and in exchange, what we do is we cut this junk drawer of things that aren't helping families and teachers in our state. I don't need to fund a bunch of $100,000 paid pronoun police in our state universities. I would rather give a sales tax break to our families and our teachers so they could send their kids back to school. Please vote yes.
Democrats voted no. Democrats voted no. Fast forward 4 months, here they are on their social media page, the Washington State Democratic Party, complaining about the cost of back-to-school supplies for families and blaming Donald Trump. Now, both of these things can be true. And by the way, we had more than enough money to give a brief, narrowly tailored tax holiday on back-to-school supplies. So that wasn't even at issue here. At issue is the hypocrisy and the selective outrage. You look at what is the problem, right? What do I care about? In this case, I care about the cost of back-to-school supplies, which every parent probably does. So why would it anger you if tariffs raise them, but not anger you that Democrats soundly rejected an amendment that would have made them less expensive for you by giving you a sales tax holiday? So that's the sort of thing. It's Democrats want to obsess over what Trump is doing rather than solve any problems. They want to obsess over what Trump is doing, vilify what Trump is doing, even if they've done it themselves. Trump even trying something different with homelessness in D.C. is cruel and horrible. Yet it's not cruel and horrible for the 2 people who were just shot to death at a park in Seattle. That's not cruel and horrible. It's not cruel and horrible the people who are dying in filth and squalor with needles in their arms in downtown Seattle. That's not cruel and horrible. But something Donald Trump hasn't even done yet is cruel and horrible. And it's awful to increase the cost of back-to-school supplies via tariffs. But when given an opportunity to lower the cost of back-to-school supplies for every single Washington family, you said no. We'd rather pay for laser hair removal for transgender inmates. You'd rather pay for laser hair removal and boob jobs, yes, they do this, for prison inmates, than give parents a break on the cost of back-to-school supplies. So how much do you really care about the cost of back-to-school supplies? Clearly not very much. Nothing is going to change in Washington state, in Oregon, in California, in New York, in all these Democratic strongholds unless and until voters tell elected leaders that they've had enough with the Trump derangement syndrome, that it's been going on for 10 years. The crises in our states are only getting worse, things that Donald Trump has nothing to do with. You can still keep your TDS as voters. Keep your TDS. Absolutely. Keep your TDS. You do you, boo. But you can have your TDS, but also simultaneously hold our elected leaders here, Democrats, accountable for failures that are only attributable to them. Do both. We can do both. We can do it. We have enough room in our brains for that. Seattle voters are very, very intelligent, although sometimes I really question that. But, all the data says that we're a highly schooled population of people. You can do both. TDS, Orange Man bad, But also Democrats, very, very bad. Very, very bad. People dying. All right, speaking of things that really shouldn't surprise us, I think, at this point, when it comes to Democratic politics and the Democratic Party, obviously hypocrisy over Donald Trump. But there's a story that's making the rounds all over social media about a 2-year effort to cover up sexual misconduct of a school teacher. And I saw it, and a lot of people are outraged by it. But again, my message to Democratic voters is, how can you be surprised by that? This is what you voted for. First, I've encouraged you guys to take the First Mark Challenge. FirstMarkInsurance.com, FirstMarkInsurance.com. We have so many undivided viewers and listeners who are members of the First Mark family. I'm a member of the First Mark family. Nicole is, our business is. And that's just because it's an awesome company to have handle your insurance. You never pay them anything. And they're proactively always looking for ways to make sure that your coverage is up to date, if you've got life changes and stuff, and also that you have the lowest price possible. They're doing all this proactively. They're checking in with you once or twice a year just to see how things are going and if you have anything changing in your life. And so many of our viewers have said that just by doing the First Mark Challenge, they've saved thousands of dollars a year. So, Democrats won't give you a tax break on back to school supplies, but you can take that money you save through First Mark Insurance, and then you can make up the difference there. So take the First Mark Challenge today, firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you, not the insurance companies. They're always going to have your best interest in mind. Okay, there is a story out from Investigate West. I want to give them credit. Again, it's horrible. It's awful. But everything Democrats in Olympia have done under the foot of the teachers union, which is the most powerful political force in the state of Washington, everything that they've done, especially in the last 2 years, has allowed for something like this to happen. So here's the headline from Investigate West. A beloved Mercer Island teacher was accused twice of sexual misconduct with students. The school district kept it quiet. So I want to read the first couple paragraphs of this story for you, because it's going to kind of set up what happened here, and then we'll get into all of the concerns that parents have now as they try to voice their frustration and disgust with this. It says, in March of 2016, administrators at Mercer Island High School received a phone call from an anonymous Microsoft employee who reported that a teacher at the school appeared to be in an inappropriate relationship with a sophomore student. So March 2016. Gary Kruse Twombly, a longtime English and journalism teacher at the school, had sent the girl texts that said, "I like the way you look today. And there are things I can't tell you and have to wait till you turn 18, according to the caller, a mentor to the student who she said she had personally seen the texts. The anonymous caller told the school leaders that she wanted to give the student the chance to come forward on her own before giving up her name. Yet another 8 years would pass before Twombly's alleged predatory behavior was fully investigated. In 2023, a victim came forward and said she had been in an emotional and physical relationship with Twombly in 2015, when she was 17 and a senior at Mercer Island High. King County prosecutors, following a thorough police investigation, said in a memo that they could, quote, establish the suspect engaged in sexual intercourse with the victim beyond a reasonable doubt. But by then, in 2023, it was beyond a 3-year statute of limitations. No charges could be filed. So before we get into the communications with parents about this, which really is at the center, I mean, teachers engaged in sexual misconduct, unfortunately, has become pretty commonplace in the state of Washington and elsewhere. It's happening quite a bit, and it's absolutely disgusting. But one of the things that has been a big back and forth, especially the last 2 legislative sessions, is Republicans trying to push for more transparency with parents on issues like this, and Democrats, because they answer to the teachers union, saying no. So before I get to that, just to kind of reset, in 2016, Mercer Island gets a call from a Microsoft employee that's anonymous and says, I've seen these texts. He's clearly in some sort of inappropriate relationship with a sophomore. I want her to come forward, but I want you to have this information in case she doesn't. So because they couldn't identify the anonymous caller, what did the school district do? Nothing. No police investigation. Oh, the anonymous caller, we don't know if this is true. There's enough information there to drag everyone in, to contact the police, to tell them, hey, you take this over. We're not investigators. This would be a crime. Shouldn't be on us to investigate it. Here's what we know. Go for it. And the police could have what? Could have searched the phone records, seen who called, what number they called from, track him down, maybe pull his text, ask him voluntarily to provide them, something like that. But instead, the school said, it's anonymous. We don't have enough information. So then you fast forward to 2023, and you have a girl coming forward saying, look, I had a sexual relationship with this teacher back when I was in high school in 2015. So now you have ample evidence that this teacher, who is highly awarded teacher from the Washington Education Association, shock of the century, has been engaged on multiple occasions with multiple students, allegedly, because he hasn't been convicted of anything because of the statute of limitations, in inappropriate sexual relationships. So the question is, what did the school do? Well, the school kept it quiet, not only from 2016, the first inclination they had, to 2023, because that part doesn't necessarily bother me as much. Now, what do you do as a school when you get an anonymous phone call that a teacher is engaged in an inappropriate sexual relationship? Now, I would argue they should have told the police, but absent that, as it's just an accusation from an anonymous person, do I think you need to send a blast email to everyone and to all the parents in the school district? At that point, probably not. But then you fast forward to 2023 and you have a woman coming forward, now an adult, saying, this happened to me. I'm going to the police. The police are actively investigating. The prosecutor's office is involved. The prosecutors say there's ample evidence to show that he had a sexual relationship with a high schooler, but the statute of limitations precluded them from moving forward. During all of that, do you think parents were notified by the Mercer Island School District? Nope. Not until a couple days ago. August 8th, 2025. August 8th, 2025. When did this former student come forward, go to the police? The spring of 2023. And even it was about a year and a half ago, that prosecutors said, we believe there's ample evidence. There's enough evidence to show that he did this, but the statute of limitations is up. So you already have that assertion from the prosecutors, and parents at the school, many of whom had their students either in a class with this guy or around this guy, had no idea any of that was going on. The school just quietly put him on leave. And the parents were none the wiser until a couple days ago. So a couple days ago, Fred Rundle, who's the Mercer Island superintendent, finally sent a letter out to parents. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he says, this is not a message I ever wanted to write. I'm sure you didn't, because you took 2 years to write it. And I know it is not one any community wants to receive. I'm writing to address a serious matter involving a former student and a former Mercer Island high school teacher, Mr. Kruse Twombly. And then he outlines sort of the actions and the investigation and all of those things. He talks about December 2023, former student comes to the police. Police are completing their investigation. They referred it to the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. It says the district kept Mr. Twombly on leave and undertook its own investigation. So during all of this, for the better part of 2 years, almost 2 years, he's under active criminal investigation. In 2024, prosecutors say we can't move forward, but he's done all of this. He's on paid leave during this time. And again, parents are none the wiser as to what's going on. So Fred Rundle, he laid out a whole timeline of all of this for parents. 2 years too late, in my opinion. He said, instead of terminating Mr. Twombly, I entered into a settlement agreement under which Mr. Twombly resigned, and we paid him through February of last year. So he's rewarded. He's rewarded for sexual misconduct. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the power of the teachers union. He gets to spend 2 years on paid leave, gets a severance essentially, and the superintendent says this was likely a smaller financial burden than what we would have expended in a legal proceeding. But far more importantly, it achieved the priorities we had for the affected student. The affected student's privacy was maintained, and we ensured that Mr. Twombly would never return to a classroom in our district. The steps we took also lead to ensure that because of his inexcusable conduct with our former student, Mr. Twombly would not be able to teach at any other Washington public school in the future. Well, isn't that great? It doesn't undo the damage that was done. So let's just say that there are people who are listening to this so far And they think, well, you know, you can't really slander the guy or say anything to parents while an investigation is ongoing. He hasn't been convicted of anything. So maybe you're sort of wishy-washy on what the steps should be. Although I would argue the second he's placed on paid administrative leave, you absolutely could send out an email to parents. Maybe even don't say the teacher's name. Just say, we have a teacher and a student, you know, and if you have concerns, come to us. So parents are aware that there's an active criminal investigation into a teacher at the school accused of years-long sexual misconduct, right? I don't feel like that's too much to ask. Here's what really has Mercer Island parents pissed off today. So there's a school board meeting. Is it tomorrow night? Tomorrow night. So the school board, of course, knows that this story is making the rounds everywhere, and parents are livid. How could you not have told us, at least for the last 21 months, that this was going on? Or at least at the point where prosecutors said there's ample evidence this happened, which was almost a year ago. So in advance of the school board meeting tomorrow night, the Mercer Island School Board released its agenda for the evening. And one of the things on the agenda is that they are going to revise their policy on public participation. Something they haven't done in 42 years. So for the first time in 42 years, they're going to amend their rules for public comment. Gee, why would you do that? That's weird timing. First time in 42 years. It's because they know that they're going to have a bunch of pissed off parents at the school board meeting tomorrow. And they don't really want to hear what those parents have to say. They don't really want to receive the legitimate, warranted criticism from parents who are worried that the school district is incapable of protecting their children from child predators because the school district would rather serve the teachers union than actually serve kids and families. And when you look at the side by side, so the existing policy versus the policy that they're going to vote on, right? So the existing policy, it was adopted in 1983. This policy was adopted before I was even born. 5 years before I was even born, the Mercer Island School District has had this same policy. And it's very simple. It basically says, you know, you have a right to public participation. The board might set a time limit on the length for each individual. Comments and questions at regular meetings may deal with any topic related to the board's conduct of the schools, et cetera, et cetera. The board president will be responsible for recognizing all speakers who will properly. It is a really lax policy, really, honestly. It's like, hey, if you show up, we're going to hear from you. Cool stuff. The new one is unhinged. It's long, and I kind of want to read most of it to you because it shows you why they're doing this, as if there were a question about why they were going to do this. So they have this whole, it almost has become a mission statement. And if I boil it down into one sentence, it would be like, don't come here and yell at us. They're like adopting this new policy that's basically, don't come here and yell at us. It says public comment is an opportunity for community members to provide input and feedback on the work of the board and the district. It is not a time for dialogue between the board and the public. To permit fair and orderly expression of public comment, with the exception of emergency situations, the board will provide an opportunity for public input at each regular meeting at which final action is to take place. Public comment will be scheduled as an agenda item and may occur orally or through written comments submitted before the meeting, which parents are concerned means that they might say, we can tell you it's only written, and completely eliminate oral testimony, which if they do that is insane. It says written comments must adhere to the standards of civility discussed below and will be distributed to each board member. So now they have 3 paragraphs on civility because they screwed up and protected an alleged sexual predator and didn't tell y'all about it for 2 years. You're the ones that have to show up and be civil. You're the ones who have to show up and mind your P's and Q's. It says the board may structure the oral public comment period, including determining total allotted time for public comment and equally apportioning the minutes for each speaker. The board is not obligated to provide additional public comment time to accommodate everyone in attendance who wishes to speak. So if you come, we might not be able to. So they're just going to make it really short, right? It says the board requires those who wish to speak to sign in. Okay, that's really reasonable. When announced, speakers should state their full name for the record. You can proceed with your public comments, but the board is not obligated to respond to questions or challenges made during public comment. And the board's silence will not signal agreement or endorsement of the speaker's remarks. The board may control the time, place, and manner of public comment. Gee. The president may terminate an individual statement when the allotted time has passed and may interrupt a speaker to require the same standard of civility that the board imposes on itself. Uncivil comments might include, but are not limited to, get this, libelous or slanderous comments under a legal standard or an unwarranted invasion of privacy. So now they're basically saying if parents get there and make libelous or slanderous comments, the school board's just going to cut them off, and the school board is going to determine whether it's in the moment. Are they lawyers? Whether it's libelous or slanderous under a legal standard? So the school screws up. The school protects an alleged sexual predator. The school gives him a payout. The school fails to tell parents so parents can protect their kids. And it's you, the public, and the parents who are the ones who need to watch what you say, who need to watch what you do, or you'll be kicked out of the school. You'll be kicked out of the school board meeting. And I've got to say, none of this is a surprise. So first of all, the fact that there's these payouts going to teachers who have credible allegations of sexual misconduct is not a surprise. There was an article, we never covered it on the show at the time, but it was out of the Tacoma News Tribune, that just looked at one county in the state, Pierce County, and it looked at sex abuse case payouts. And it had found over a 10-year period that just Pierce County Public Schools paid out nearly $52 million to resolve sex abuse allegations in Pierce County school districts. And most of that in the last 4 years. I mean, Tacoma has had 16 payouts over allegations of sexual misconduct. So this stuff is happening all the time, and it's happening with increased frequency. And might I also say, I think we have this Travis Couture cut, don't we? Mm-hmm. You remember this past legislative session when they were upending the Parental Bill of Rights. And they basically want to keep parents out of schools. They don't want you to know what's happening with your kid's school. The whole reason the Parental Rights Initiative passed in the first place is because parents from the left and the middle and the right said, yeah, of course we should know what's happening with our kids at school. Schools shouldn't be keeping secrets from us. And when Democrats went to upend it, in the language, they put this thing in about, if there's, allegations of sexual misconduct or criminal misconduct that involve a student or a teacher, parents will be notified at the first available opportunity or within 48 hours. That's what Democrats wanted it to be. And you'll remember that State Rep Travis Couture, a Republican, came out with an amendment, and this was just shared all over the internet, where he said, at the first available opportunity or within 48 hours, no, it should be immediate. Here's that moment.
The underlying bill essentially states that schools can wait 48 hours before they tell parents if their children were involved in any kind of criminal action or if there was any sexual misconduct of staff. We have seen a stunning amount of sexual misconduct and sexual assaults by educators in our schools just in the last year itself. As a parent myself, I would be disgusted and sickened to know if my kids had some kind of sexual abuse put upon them by staff, and I wasn't notified immediately of those things. Now, this happened actually in my kid's school district, where an 8th grade school teacher was grooming and having inappropriate sexual relationships with 8th grade boys. This is all too much commonplace, and parents deserve to know right away whenever there is any kind of criminal activity or sexual abuse or sexual allegations of staff. For God's sake, please vote yes.
They voted no. They voted no. Common sense. Hey, if a teacher is accused of sexually abusing my child, you got to call me right away. That's what Republicans said. Democrats said, well, we'll do it at the first available opportunity, or at least within 48 hours. And if you remember at the time, that went insane all over the country. It was news everywhere. So Democrats basically begged Republicans, can we vote on that again? And then about a month later, they voted on it again. And Democrats were like, okay, yes, yeah, we'll do the immediate thing. We'll do the immediate thing. So they're supposed to now, under law, have immediate notice. So that in theory, moving forward, a situation like what happened in Mercer Island can't happen again. But you can see why Republicans thought it was necessary. You have all these payouts, tens of millions of dollars, probably, well, that's one county, so hundreds of millions of dollars across the state. You have instances like this where parents are kept in the dark for almost 2 years about credible allegations of sexual misconduct on the part of a teacher that are so credible you put them on leave. And Travis Couture brings up an amendment, yeah, we should tell parents about this stuff immediately, and Democrats vote no, and only under intense public shaming, thanks in part to a lot of you, they turn around, beg for another vote, and vote yes. And look, you might look at this and say, okay, the red-pilled Brandi and me will be like, they want to protect predators. That's the red-pilled Brandi. We'll be like, well, they just want to protect predators. Because I can't think of another reason. Why wouldn't you want to inform parents immediately? Why wouldn't you want parents to know? Why are you trying to change the laws around this stuff? So the red-pilled Brandi would say that, and then the, reasonable person in me would say, Brandi, no, who would want to protect a predator? Who would want to protect a child predator? But then there are stories like this one from our friend Jason Rantz, literally about a Democrat trying to protect a predator. And then it all kind of makes sense, and red-pilled Brandi's correct. So this from Jason Rantz just a couple days ago. Democratic senator pushed softer child sex crime penalties to help her friend with a predator son. Remember, we covered this bill when it was being debated in Olympia, and everyone was like, what are you talking about? And it would have reduced punishments for predators who are caught up in those net nanny operations, because they said, well, these operations don't involve real children. They involve detectives posing as children, a la Chris Hansen to Catch a Predator. So it shouldn't be as much of a punishment because they weren't actually preying on real children. So Jason Rantz reports, State Senator Lisa Wellman, a Democrat from where? Mercer Island, okay? Mercer Island, very relevant. Partnered with a constituent, the father of a convicted child sex predator, to push legislation that would dismantle the very online sting operations that put his son in prison. What Wellman didn't publicly disclose, that constituent is her close personal friend. Text messages and emails obtained by the Jason Rantz Show reveal Wellman worked extensively with Bruce Glant, whose son, Brian Earl Glant, was convicted in April of 2018 on 2 counts of attempted first-degree rape of a child. The charges stemmed from a 2016 net nanny sting. He was 20 at the time. According to court documents, Brian Glant believed he was meeting a mother offering her 6 and 11-year-old daughters and 13-year-old son for sex. Together, Wellman and Bruce Glant quietly strategized how to weaken the very laws targeting online predators who solicit minors. One of the bills, which would have shortened sex offender registration requirements, would have personally benefited Glant's son. So when you've got all the conservative conspiracy theorists is like, no, they just want to protect child predators. And then the more reasonable people are like, oh, come on, they just want to protect child predators. And moreover, the teachers union wants to protect child predators. At any cost, the teachers union will protect its teachers, no matter what they do in schools. You look at all the cases of insane ideological agendas being pushed on kids, rank anti-Semitism, disgusting, disturbing sex ed lessons. Every step of the way, the teachers union will protect those teachers, and the Democrats will then protect those teachers because they need to stay in the good graces of the teachers union, which bankrolls their political campaigns. And then you have people like Senator Wellman, whose buddy Bruce's son ends up trying to solicit what he thought was a 6 and 11-year-old girl and a 13-year-old boy, trying to basically buy them for sex from their mom, gets caught up in a sting. And because his daddy's well connected to Senator Lisa Wellman on Mercer Island, they scheme in text messages behind the scenes to try to make sure that poor future child predators don't suffer the same fate as his son. Give me a break, you guys. We shouldn't be surprised by any of this. They're telling you what they want to do. They're telling you what they want to do. She sat there in Olympia and testified about her bill and tried to justify the asinine argument that child predators should get lower sentences. She didn't hide that. We just didn't know the motivation. They're telling you what they want to do. They voted against an amendment to allow parents to immediately be notified if their child was victimized by a teacher. They're not hiding it. Why is this a surprise to anyone? And I'm sorry, again, check notes. Mercer Island is blue as well. And Mercer Island State Senator is Lisa Wellman, who just this session did that. And now Mercer Island parents are angry that people are trying to coddle child predators? I'm sorry, it is your fault. I think you have every right to be mad, but you cannot bifurcate yourself and your voting decisions from this situation. You vote for this. You vote for the people who want to protect predators. You vote for the people who are bankrolled by the teachers union, who protect bad teachers. So if you're mad about what Mercer Island did, and you're a Democratic voter, vote blue no matter who on Mercer Island, before you walk into that school board meeting tomorrow, take a good hard look in the mirror. Because your votes allowed for an environment like this to flourish. All right, coming up next, I think we'll do another edition of our segment, The Seattle Times is Trash. But first, all of us are working hard toward our retirement, but you need to make sure that your retirement portfolio is properly protected against risk. How can you do that? Thank you for asking. You could reach out to our friend Zach Abraham at Bulwark Capital and just get a second opinion on your retirement portfolio. He would be more than happy to do that for you. And he'll kind of take you through, he'll give you an honest assessment of your current portfolio, and then he'll talk about Bulwark Capital's risk management strategy and how they're always looking for opportunities to lower risk, lower cost, give your retirement as much upside as possible. You only get one retirement. Get a second opinion on your portfolio's efficiency. Schedule your free risk review now at knowyourriskpodcast.com. Don't put it off. Don't put it off. knowyourriskpodcast.com. You know, we're not going to do away with unbelievable. I feel like I need to tell people that so they don't lose their minds. However, since we just launched our new segment yesterday, I figured we'd keep it going with another edition of The Seattle Times is Trash. Okay, so the Seattle Times put out an article that is absolutely laughable as it pertains to Trump's Medicaid cuts. The headline, while homeless patients have a lot to lose under Trump's Medicaid changes. Even before I read it, while homeless patients are losing a lot right now, mostly their lives. And you guys don't seem as fired up about that. So angry about something Trump's doing to the homeless, but not angry about, I don't know, the 15 years of a worsening homeless crisis under Democrats. So just the story selection in and of itself shows why the Seattle Times is trash. But let's read it, shall we? Another sob story from the Seattle Times. For years, I feel like I need some sort of next time, some sort of violin music, right? For their sob story writing. For years, Nicole, not our Nicole, lived with the kind of pain that would stop her in her tracks. Lightning bolts would shoot down her leg. So painful it would bring her to her knees. She's fallen many times because of it. Eventually, she told her employer she couldn't keep working until she could undergo surgery to fix the degenerative discs in her back, causing this chaos. But the 55-year-old is on Medicaid and had difficulty scheduling the surgery with anyone who will accept the federally subsidized health care. After 9 months of waiting, her employer told her they could no longer hold her job. I couldn't pay the bills, she said. Okay, and that's sad. Anybody who's hurt and can't work, I feel bad for Nicole at this point. With 2 surgeries completed and at least 2 more to go, Nicole is sleeping in the back seat of her broken down Buick and facing a new hurdle to get back on her feet. She asked to be referred to only with her first name because she's worried the stigma of her health and homelessness will hurt her job hunt. She said Congress passed a spending and tax bill in July that requires Medicaid recipients ages 19 to 64 served under the Affordable Care Act's expansion to work, study, or volunteer at least 80 hours a month to maintain their coverage starting January 2027. Or they'll have to prove again and again they have a qualifying condition that exempts them from work requirements. Okay, let this sink in for a second. So you've got this woman, if we're to believe her story, that she's, because the Seattle Times is obviously going to believe it just without any proof whatsoever, but she says she got hurt, lost her job, sleeping in the backseat of her car, and she's got these surgeries and she needs it paid for with the Affordable Care Acts and the requirements therein. So Republicans in Congress, of course, and there's all these freak out from Democrats about Trump's changes to Medicaid. But if it was just that first sentence where it said Congress passed a spending bill in July that requires Medicaid recipients ages 19 to 64 to work, study, or volunteer at least 80 hours a month to maintain their coverage starting January 27th, then I'd feel bad for Nicole. Like, well, what do you mean? She can't work, study, or volunteer if her condition is that bad, so you're just going to take away her Medicaid coverage? No, that last sentence is critical. Or if you can't do that, if you can't prove that you can work, study, or volunteer at least 8 hours a week, you have to prove you have a qualifying condition that exempts you from work requirements. So what's the problem? What's the problem? She doesn't have to lose it. She just has to prove that she has a qualifying condition. And if she's telling the truth about the severity of her injury, then she can very easily prove that she has a qualifying condition and there's no issue whatsoever. The Seattle Times goes on to say, anywhere from 200,000 to 320,000 out of the nearly 2 million Washingtonians on Medicaid could lose their coverage due to the upcoming changes. Weird. Within 2 years, we will probably skyrocket to most of our patients being uninsured, said Barbara DePietro, Senior Director of Policy for the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council. Wait. That doesn't make any sense. So you're saying within 2 years, most of your patients will probably be uninsured. Okay, but the only way they lose their insurance is if they either weren't working, studying, or volunteering at least 80 hours a week, or they couldn't prove they had any reason not to. So what you're telling me, what you're tattling on all of them, what you're admitting, and the Seattle Times somehow doesn't recognize this, is that most of our patients probably don't qualify for this benefit and could be working, but just aren't? 200,000 to 320,000 people? That right there is proof why the changes were necessary. Because if you're really saying that most of your homeless patients who benefit from this would lose it, what you're saying is they can't prove that they have a valid reason to receive it. And do you think the Seattle Times thought to maybe, call that out? What's the big deal if you have to prove that you have an actual qualifying condition? And then here's the one thing they say will be hard for the homeless. Under the new law, states will be required to regularly obtain all enrollees' addresses to prevent people from being enrolled in multiple states. Doing so could disproportionately impact homeless recipients. She says, how do you verify an address for people who don't have one? The same way you verify their address so they can vote. Homeless people in our state, we've talked about it for years. You have to have an address to get a ballot. Where do they send it to? 777 South Washington is a very popular address. They send it to the areas, the facilities, DESC, to the homeless shelters. They send thousands of them out to homeless people so they can vote. So you're saying, Democrats, that you have an address for them to be able to vote, but you don't have an address for them to be able to verify their Medicaid? that they so desperately need, it's like life or death, put their address at the homeless shelter, the same address that you use so they can get a ballot in the mail. And if you have homeless individuals also having to have an address, right? This is a benefit for them because it will tie them to a place where they hopefully are getting services. You know what? To this woman who, if the only thing is an injury, which I just don't believe, because we have so much shelter space available for homeless people in this state and apartments and all these things. And you're saying she doesn't have any substance abuse or mental health issues. She just has an injury that she's nursing back to health. And that's the only reason she doesn't have a job. I could find her a shelter in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Andrea Suarez, if that's really the only issue, you tell us and Andrea Suarez can have her a shelter in 5 minutes. Of course, that's not the problem. But if that's the case and she says, look, I need these surgeries, so maybe I can't be living in my car and I've got to actually plug into the system. I've got to plug into the system so I have an address that I can use for my Medicaid confirmation because this is life or death for me. But she doesn't want to do that. Why? Why, Seattle Times? Have you asked yourselves that? Have you asked yourselves that simple question before you reported on the story? No, you haven't. Why haven't they, Nicole? Because
it's trash.
Then you're supposed to play the sounder. Why haven't they, Nicole?
Oh, sorry.
Because the Seattle Times is trash. All right, we'll get to some national news. We'll figure it out. We'll get you on it, Nicole. It'll be great. Well, that's all right. Ruined my whole segment. No, I'm just kidding. All right, a little national news, but it's not really national. It's kind of local too. So, what the hell is the press secretary's name? I almost said Karine Jean-Pierre. Caroline Leavitt.
Yep.
How dare I confuse her with Karine Jean-Pierre? She came out and she was talking about prices that are dropping for Americans, including prices at the pump. Prices at the pump are down 10% nationally, year over year. You want to guess where they're not down? Washington State. Of course they're not. And it's so funny to see people like not put the pieces together of why we would be on such a different trajectory than so much of the rest of the country. The national average right now is $3.15 a gallon. The Washington State average is $4.41 a gallon. Does that really surprise anyone? Of course, the Climate Commitment Act is continuing to drive prices up. Washington State continues to have one of the highest gas rates in the country. And one of the things I think is also maybe factoring into people not being more livid about this is that they are still down compared to where they were at their peak, like what was it, a year and a half ago? Mm-hmm. So people in the last year or so, they've seen much higher rates in Washington State. Is that the last year one?
Yes. So the colors are swapped. It's from AAA. So the colors are swapped. So 344 was the national average last year. 422 was our national average. Mm-hmm. So does that make sense? So it's, so that's a 5% higher than last year.
Oh, yeah.
10% higher nationally.
Yeah. But we've seen in the last year and a half much higher gas prices. So people are probably like, oh, well, we're not at those peaks. But it should be much lower if we didn't have the Climate Commitment Act, which is very frustrating. So I'm just happy to see every time I drive by a marquee of a gas station that Jay Inslee's legacy is still very much intact. And I don't know when voters will wake up and finally blame the high gas prices here on Democrats.
But you know what I think is a little disappointing is that because Trump's brought the gas prices down so much that I don't think people realize, we voted down the CCA, getting rid of the CCA. We did not pass that initiative, right? If we had, I think people would see obviously we'd see lower gas prices. I think if gas prices were still high, we'd be feeling the hurt of not passing that more. Right. And people would be like, we should run that again and maybe we'd pass it. But because gas prices have come down so much, we don't feel the burn of not passing that. Yeah. Right.
And even though we just had an increase in the gas tax at the pump, 6 cents per gallon. So Trump is maybe helping ease some of the concerns, even though gas prices here are still very, very high. We only feel
it when we look at what everybody else is paying.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get to our daily subscriber show poll. We asked you guys on Patreon, Locals, and X, what category of items, if any, would you most like to be exempt from the sales tax? Baby items, school supplies, or guns and ammo? And of course, I ask this because Democrats are complaining that, oh my gosh, school supplies are so expensive, but Republicans wanted to exempt school supplies. And I threw in guns and ammo because I just wanted to see how selfish all of you were.
I know. I think that's going to be what everyone says. But
You
I
do.
would say school supplies is probably what I would like to see.
No, I don't think it is. I think you need to think again about that again.
That's what I would like to see.
No, I disagree.
Okay.
If I know you well enough.
No, I'm not going to say baby supplies.
Why?
I know. Because you make a choice to have a baby.
Yeah, but don't you want to help people start families and restore the strength of the nuclear family?
You're getting
and
the Trump credit. Like, no.
Okay.
No.
All right.
No, you
Nicole
make a choice
hates
to have a
babies.
baby. You get baby showers. People are given all sorts of crap for having babies.
You don't want there to be people to have one more reason not to abort their fetus?
Well, no. Well, there's lots of reasons not to do that. But no, there's already a lot of, if you need help with baby stuff, there are lots of places, nonprofits that you can go for help with baby stuff. For school supplies, I think that there are, that's one of those things where I think a lot of kids, you're in competition with all these kids and everybody wants the coolest stuff. And I agree. Make it a little easier for everybody to get the same cool stuff for school. So all the kids are on the same playing field a little bit, or a little closer to the same playing field.
And I'm kidding. That's a perfectly acceptable answer. But I think they should prohibit kids from having the flashy binders. So my mom didn't have to go and get all these Lisa Frank things or whatever it was. I was about to say Anne Frank, but that's the wrong Frank by quite a bit. Right. And you had to go get all these. Oh, and it's like, what does your backpack look like? What does your trapper keeper look like? Remember trapper keepers?
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to have trapper keepers. Actually, that was a thing.
Interesting.
You couldn't have them.
So most people are saying baby items because they want to encourage people to have children. Nicole, 42% of, and this is a very split poll.
The savings there is so minimal, and the cost that it is to have children over the long term, and saving a little on the tax of baby items. Give me a break. That's not encouraging somebody to have a child.
This is very split though. 42%
I appreciate people who said that.
Say baby items, 27% school supplies, 31% guns and ammo. More people want a tax break on guns and ammo than school supplies. And it is a constitutional right. That's why I threw that in. Because we shouldn't be taxed on our constitutional rights, Let's see. Y says school supplies, having just spent money on them for this coming year, but baby supplies are probably the best idea because it's something you absolutely have to buy for healthy starts to kids' lives, and they are so expensive already. Christine says, I chose baby items because those items are the keys to giving kids a good start in life. School supplies was my second choice, as education is the way out of poverty or the way to stay out of poverty.
I actually think I can make this argument all day because we're already taxed and it already goes to schools. We shouldn't be taxed again because we're buying stuff that's going again to schools. I think no, you choose to have babies, and you don't have to have the fanciest baby supplies to have babies. You can use cloth diapers. You can breastfeed. You can you can do all these different things. Sure, take it off formula, but you can also get formula from nonprofits. You can get it from the state if you want. If you
hear that,
can't
moms? Suck it up. Suck it up and let the baby get your nipple.
And the hate that I get from that is, you don't have kids and you don't know. No, I get it. They're expensive, but again, you choose to have kids. And you know what? The school supplies is part of that cost you're going to have to endure later. So it's like owning a house. You know what? If the water heater breaks, you're going to have to
I didn't know this was going to get so saucy.
Wow.
Big Swan says, none of the above. Baby and school would get abused. Guns and ammo. Why on earth should there be a sales tax exempt when hammers aren't? Yes.
I might change my opinion. I might say guns and ammo over babies.
No, you're not allowed to change your opinion. You just have passionately defended it for 5 minutes. You'll look like a total sellout if you change it.
I know.
Let's see. Wanna Move Mama says, definitely not guns and ammo. I'm an NRA member, have been for decades, totally believe in the right to bear arms, but I'll be damned if I think we should make it cheaper for thugs to get their ammo. Thugs aren't buying ammo. Thugs are stealing stuff from people. Jen, I wouldn't pick any of those. Rather see something that almost anyone can benefit from. So maybe like outdoor sales tax break, camping gear, sports items. And we actually on Florida Report talk about this, DeSantis has done they have a bunch of reoccurring, kind of odd, random, but they do a summer fun sales tax holiday where it is on like outdoor equipment and camping and all these things. They also do a second A, a 2A sales tax holiday. So
I like that. Or the property tax. He's getting rid of property taxes.
A lot of states have permanent that baby items and back to school supplies are permanently without sales tax. But in our state, how would they get money to pay for laser hair removal for transgender inmates? They've got to do it. Let me see. I wanted to find one that did the gun thing, and what was their Danielle, being a member of the NRA, I'd like to say guns and ammo, but realistically, I think it would be more beneficial for baby items. When we had the twins, the cost for everything was astronomical, and any sort of money-saving areas would have been helpful for us. Twins or not, baby items are costly, so I'd like to see families have an opportunity to save there. Yeah, I definitely do baby items. North Carolina has no sales tax weekend in August, Jan says. Sorry, what? What?
Oh, I just gave you of course, baby.
Because I'm not selfish. I'm a good human being.
Everybody, I've been a nanny. I know how much it costs. Like
nobody's saying that about you.
Oh yeah, there's some commenters.
Nobody's saying that.
A lot of agrees with me, but a lot of you've never
what
had
Nicole
to buy
does
formula.
in these situations when she controlled the comments is she cherry pick a bunch of comments that were like, "Yay, Nicole! Yay!" But now Miranda controls the comments, so I don't know. Jan says in North Carolina they have no sales tax. They have a no sales tax weekend in August. It apparently started for back to school expenses. And maybe that's more fair, is just say, hey, no sales tax for the month of August. So on anything, I like that more. On anything, like, hey, no sales tax, go do you, shop, inject your cash into our economy because that benefits the state coffers anyway, whether it's back to school supplies or a stand-up paddleboard that you'll use approximately 3 times and then stash away in your garage and never use again.
Remember our plan for those?
We had plans. We had plans.
For
the plans did not come to fruition. All right. Okay, Nicole, you're off the hook, but I'll see what Miranda puts in the comments on that. You stay out of the comments.
Don't
go in there and add stuff just to make yourself feel better.
See if I was loved or hated today.
Yeah. Miranda, if Nicole puts any comments in the show sheet, delete them out. All right. If you're thinking about selling your home, maybe moving to North Carolina, where they apparently have a sales tax holiday weekend every August, reach out to our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com. Wes and his team have an innovative marketing strategy to make sure you get the most possible value out of your home. That's what everybody wants, right? And right now it's important because there are actually a lot of homes on the market right now compared to even 3-4 months ago. So that does mean more competition. So your home has to stand out on the market. Luckily, homes are still selling for very high prices. So if you're a home seller, it's a great time to list your home, but you do need to make sure your listing stands out. And if there are some cosmetic updates that can get you more value on the back end, that you do those as well. And Wes can help you handle those, manage contractors, and even make sure you don't have to pay for them until closing. So I just think it's a great service. It's called their Listing Boost Concierge Service. So reach out to Wes Jones, sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com. It really just is a better way to sell your home. Okay, comments. My mouth is so dry. I was rushing and I didn't get any water. It's okay. On comments, homeless camp being cleared after the murders, Bill Biz with a $20 super chat. When will Democratic lawmakers get a clue that enabling is not a good thing? Apparently never. Old Sub Sailor, the homeless industrial complex is nothing more than a fundraiser for corrupt politicians, kickbacks and political payoffs laundered through NGOs. I agree with that. Moon Goddess, I like that. Moon Goddess. Washington legislation isn't about fixing problems, it's about creating problems. More problems equals more money. Problems equals no money. No problems equals no money. Washington politicians don't want fixes. I agree with that too. Jethro McButterpants. It's amazing just how many of today's issues we already have codified solutions for if we only enforce them. Again, yeah, you can't tell me it's cruel to put someone in jail for having an encampment, because in most cities in our state, that is something you can actually do. So somewhere along the line, Democrats thought it was a good idea, but now it's mean and evil if Trump does it. Figure that one out. You know what? Don't figure that one out. There's nothing to figure out. Dems being mad about the school supply costs. Brian says Dems aren't about to vote yes on any bill sponsored by a Republican. I don't care how sensible it is. Yeah, a lot of that. On Facebook, Buzz Brown, they're stabbing you in the back, stealing your money and screaming, "It was Trump. He did it." Yes. And too many people believe it, and that's just sad. On the Mercer Island creeper teacher, Remind Me of Me says they continue to have the mentality that they are not your kids, they are their kids, and they will do as they please. Oh, 100%. Janice Willis, and they wonder why homeschooling and private schools are becoming popular. Yeah, and I mean, there's probably a reason Bob Ferguson doesn't send his kids to a public school. Sends them to a private school. Lucky for Bob Ferguson, he can afford it. But he doesn't want you to be able to do it. Mountain Mama on Patreon, I think that the community needs to get together for a class action lawsuit. Each of the current and former school board members, along with the superintendent, needs to be named in the said lawsuit. The community as a whole needs to ask for the resignation of both the superintendent and the current school board. Well, they probably won't be able to at the meeting because the school board will just shut them up. So we'll see how that goes.
I think a big contributor on that was the principal at the time too. So there was a lot of wrong done. So yes. I think there was a lot of people that could be looked at in this particular case.
Well, you better not slander them at the school board meeting tomorrow by making accusations, because they'll shut you up. Can't say anything about that, and they're not going to answer your questions either.
Right.
And their silence doesn't mean they agree or disagree.
And, we should mention that statute of limitations, that law did change, but it wasn't retroactive, right? So it couldn't apply to this case, but that law has been changed. So now the statute of limitations would not apply to new cases.
It's like it starts now the clock when you report the crime, I think is how it works. That's not 100%. There's some exceptions, but basically or after your 18th birthday.
Right.
I think this clock actually starts at your 18th birthday. So they don't expect you as a child to come forward and report these things, which makes a lot of sense. On our segment, the Seattle Times is trash. Matthew Cook, at this rate, the Seattle Times is trash is going to be a daily segment. Probably not daily, but I'm sure we'll have one at least once a week. Sunny Days PNW, Unbelievable's homeless Medicaid. All major hospital systems in the Pacific Northwest offer charity coverage of medical bills. People who earn more than homeless can qualify for 100% financial relief after insurance. So homeless is included at 100%. This story is propaganda. Yeah, and they're not going to, you as a homeless person, you go into a hospital and you get treatment, whether you give them any sort of, you're not going to get a bill for it. The bill's going to be put on other people. So there's so many things about that story that make no sense. Miranda put in a comment, said, I kind of agree with Nicole though, haha.
Meh.
So Miranda isn't going to put in comments hating on Nicole because she agrees with Nicole that it should be back to school supplies for the sales tax holiday. You two can just kick rocks. Always conspiring against me. All right, Nicole, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm fine. It's a fine answer.
I know.
It's a fine answer. They would all be great. I would love sales tax holiday for everything.
Agreed. I'm not against giving them a
Nicole
tax holiday.
Hates babies. Just kidding. She loves babies. And babies love her. It's very weird.
It's very weird.
I've been in rooms with me, you, and a baby, and the baby didn't want anything to do with me. So that's all right. Okay, with that, let's get to our closing sanity check. This is nuts. So we talked about, of course, how much Democrats are losing their mind over Trump, trying to clean up D.C., but I haven't seen anything quite like this. So this guy is a New York Times Atlantic contributor. I can't pronounce his name, so I'm not even going to try. He was on Morning Joe on MSNBC, and just play it.
It's really important to be clear about what is going on here, and a relatively small crime problem is being used for specific authoritarian purposes that we know and understand. So let's be clear about D.C. does have one really big crime problem, which was the January 6th insurrection incited by the current president of the United States. And his first act in coming back was pardoning all the people who tried to overturn constitutional republic order in Washington, D.C. When I go to D.C., I'm not afraid of losing my wallet so much as I'm afraid of losing my vote. I'm not afraid of losing my wallet so much as I'm afraid that my children's freedom to breathe will be stolen in a world where climate change policy is non-existent. I'm afraid that the future of middle-class people will be stolen by the very things you were talking about, cutting the safety net, cutting Medicaid, cutting rural hospitals.
Right.
So there is carjacking.
And of course,
let me just finish. There is a carjacking going on.
But you got to worry about two things. You got to worry about two things at the same time.
Let me just finish my point.
I'd cut him off too. Even the cuckoos at MSNBC said this guy is absolutely crazy. He doesn't care if people get murdered on the streets of D.C. as long as climate change doesn't prevent his kids from breathing. Yeah, the reason we have Sanity Check is so you can watch a clip like that and say, that's insane. And then that's your sanity check to realize you still got it. That has been our closing Sanity Check for today. That has been today's episode of Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving Common Sense a comeback. We appreciate every single one of you. We truly, truly do. But we like our paid subscribers just a little bit more. undividedpod.com. undividedpod.com. You can support our show for just $5 a month. It's how this show is possible, so we appreciate our paid subscribers. And if you haven't signed on already, we would love for you to do so while you're there. Shop our merch store. I don't think I have anything else. Is it Wednesday today? Holy smokes. We got our final live show of the week coming up tomorrow. I would say I'm sure it's going to be a good one, because I feel like they're all good ones, you know? No misses. All hits, no misses. See you then.